Now, for a look at territorial tension and arms proliferation in Asia, I am now being joined online by a lecturer of politics and international relations of the Liverpool Hope University, Dr. Bola Adediran. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And in the course of the conversation, we're hoping to have foreign affairs analyst as well, Kelechi Deka. But let's begin with Dr. Adediran. A lot of people are now comparing Asia, East Asia especially, with Europe in 1914, and that was before, I think that was World War I. What's your assessment of the situation in Asia?
Well, as you've shown in your report, across the world, there are increasing tensions in many places in Europe, but also, as you've mentioned, in Asia, in the Korean Peninsula, and particularly also in the Taiwan Straits. I think these are really difficult times. These are unprecedented number of crises that we're seeing sort of boiling at the same time across the world. And I think that the world is on the edge at the moment. I think that there are clear evidence to show that the sort of the liberal international order, the long peaceful reign that we've seen since the end of the Second World War is gradually coming to an end. And that many countries are becoming a bit more aggressive in their state policies. And this is why we're seeing all of this sort of crisis points across the world. So I think that these are difficult times, really, and I am particularly worried about all the different issues springing up in different places around the world.
And I'm sure you're following the news with Serbia and Kosovo as well, and hopefully we can get there. But let's talk about what for you think is a likely potential trigger, because I've read reports of analysts who say there are potential points of escalation in Asia. For example, North Korea has nuclear powers, and so that perhaps is a potential trigger. What for you is a potential trigger in Asia?
I think that for me, it is the Taiwan Straits. I think that particularly, in fact, if I was going to rank the possibility of a major conflagration happening around the world, the potential of a third world war, I would put the Taiwan Strait right at the top, even probably ahead of Ukraine. I think that a lot of people do not understand the potential tensions in the Taiwan Strait. Number one is that Taiwan sees itself as an independent province, as an independent country. China sees it as a breakaway province. Now, those are two dramatically opposing views. China wants to reincorporate Taiwan into its sphere of influence, is the same way that it's done with Hong Kong. Taiwan is ready to resist to the death. Now, what we're seeing also, and the added element of this, is that Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, is hell-bent on reintegrating Taiwan, whether by force or by peaceful means. Now, peaceful means is impossible, partly because the Taiwanese do not want to have don't want to be integrated into China. They see themselves as an independent state with a different culture and different political paths. They're a functioning democracy and do not want to come into the sort of the autocratic totalitarian sphere of China. So there is a resistance from that. And Xi Jinping believes that China's rejuvenation, the Chinese dream, as he calls it, which is about China basically coming into its own in the 21st century and becoming a world power, a recognized power, would be incomplete without Taiwan being part of China. So there is a clear dissonance between the two opposing camps and how they see the world. Where the potential for conflagration comes also is because of the Taiwanese Relations Act, or the Taiwan Relations Act, which basically imposes and obligates the U.S. to provide means of self-defense for the U.S., for Taiwan. Now, the U.S. has gone a step beyond that, where previously it's maintained this so-called strategic ambiguity in relations to the Taiwan Strait, where it's not confirming that it's going to come to the aid of Taiwan if anything happens, but it's basically leaving it in a gray. Under President Joe Biden, the U.S. has gone a bit further to say very categorically that it would come to the defense of Taiwan if anything happens. So that is a potential issue for me, where if anything happens in that Taiwanese Strait and Xi Jinping goes ahead to launch an attack against Taiwan to take control of Taiwan by force, I think that there is a potential for the two major superpowers to come in confrontation with each other. Now, with North Korea and South Korea.
And I just wanted to jump in quickly for North Korea, because it is an unpredictable weapon state, a nuclear weapon state. We've seen several missiles being launched by North Korea, some reaching as far as some islands of the United States. You're not worried that, as unpredictable as North Korea is, it could be the trigger point?
Well, why I think that the North Korea one is not really as potentially concerning as Taiwan is because we've seen this sort of rhetoric, this kind of act from North Korea for a long time. Yes, it is true that more than at any time in its history, North Korea has launched more than 90 missiles, ballistics and cruise missiles this year. But this is also, I mean, the playbook of North Korea is to ratchet up rhetoric, is to increase aggressive acts so that they can get concessions from the international community. Of course, technically, North Korea and South Korea are at war because after the 1950 to 1953 war, they never signed a peace treaty. What eventually happened after that war was an armistice, a sort of a ceasefire. So they are technically at war, but at the same time, we've not seen major confrontation between them. I think that what Kim Jong-un is trying to do as much as possible is to create tensions in a way that it gets concessions from the US. And this is what North Korea has done strategically and very smartly since the beginning of the Republic.
Let me just quickly state that we're supposed to have Kelechi Decker, but he is in the US and he's been disturbed by snow blizzards, so he won't be able to join the conversation as earlier mentioned. But let me bring your attention, because you've mentioned earlier about a lot of flashpoints around the world. We know that there is Armenia and Azerbaijan at the moment. There is Kosovo and Serbia, which perhaps is the biggest threat in Europe today, because Serbia has now Serbia's army is now on alert readiness against Kosovo, and just over something as little as number plates. And we've seen that tension in that region. How combustible is that situation?
Well, the one in Kosovo and between Kosovo and Serbia is particularly also concerning because, of course, we know how the Balkan wars of the 1990s played out, and the ethnic cleansing that were carried out, the Srebrenica tragedy, for instance, the Srebrenica genocide, and the ethnic cleansing that was going on in Kosovo before NATO intervened in 1999. And we know that the playbook has always previously been that when Serbia wants to make a military incursion into a neighboring country, it uses barricades, and we're seeing that in Kosovo at the moment. But I'm still less concerned about Kosovo, partly because the high state of military readiness that the president Aleksandar Vučić has ordered is not unusual. So in September, for instance, he did the same thing. He placed the military on a high state of readiness. But what is particularly
if I may quickly just jump in, because you said that it is not as worrying, but you don't see a parallel between what's happened between China and Taiwan, and then Serbia and Kosovo, bearing in mind that Serbia doesn't also recognize Kosovo as an independent state when it declared its independence in 1998. After the war in 1998, 1999, rather.
Yes. So there are some parallels, partly because, of course, as you've mentioned, China does not recognize Taiwan. Serbia does not recognize Kosovo. China has made efforts to, has impressed on countries to de-recognize Taiwan in the same way that Serbia has done so. I think that where the differences are is in terms of military capacity. And I do recognize, obviously, that the war in Ukraine has shifted attention a bit from what is going on in Kosovo, and maybe Serbia sees this opportunity, sees this as an opportunity to sort of establish a more dominant presence in Kosovo. But don't also forget there are NATO forces, 4,000 NATO forces in Kosovo at the moment, sort of keeping the peace. So the possibility of Serbia basically in crossing into Kosovo, I think is slightly less than what we will see in the Taiwan Straits. Also, I think that the fact that Resolution 1244 that was agreed to that was passed by the UN Security Council allows for, in certain situations, Serbian forces to be brought back into Kosovo to maintain the peace. Now, I think that what the EU is trying to do now is to determine how dangerous the situation is and how much they could give to the Serbians to placate the Serbians. What I worry could likely happen is that Serbia could take a leaf from its from the playbook of the Russians, which is to support criminal gangs in northern Kosovo and to destabilize Kosovo from that perspective. I think that's what,
especially because Serbia also has the backing of Russia as well. The only country in Europe that doesn't have sanctions against Russia. But let me quickly ask you this, because we're winding now the conversation. Do you see, with all of these crises, whether in Asia or in Europe, do you see a political solution, or are we inching closer to the World War III, as some analysts have predicted?
I think that a political solution in the individual conflicts may be possible. I mean, for example, President Zelensky has come out with a 10-point peace plan in Ukraine. And I think that what we're going to see next year is that the war gradually gets to a point where it is untenable for any of the parties to continue. I mean, Western powers will get a bit weary and would need the path to peace in Ukraine. And the path to peace, obviously, would come from the wariness of both sides. Where I think the problem really lies, as I've mentioned, other spots, North Korea and South Korea, for instance, that is an ongoing conflict that has always acted in the way that we're seeing now. I don't think that would crystallize into anything dramatic. Kosovo and Serbia, I think that the fact that both countries are also trying to join the EU is a leverage that the EU can impose on both of them, both countries, in a way that ensures that this conflict does not go beyond what we expect. But I think that where the issue really is Taiwan and China, where it is difficult to see how any country can placate China, because China sees Taiwan as integral to sort of the rejuvenation that it wants and the stature that it desires.
And we have our eyes on all of this tension arising in different parts of the country. Always great to have you on, Lecturer of Politics and International Relations of the Liverpool Hope University, Dr. Bola Adediran.